Hello, friends. Welcome back to our chapel time, our fireside chat, chapel time together. The last 2 weeks I spent talking about prayer. 2 weeks ago we talked about praying for more than just the dollar section prayers of life as we go along. Last week we talked about being persistent in prayer, in certain things, to always pray and to never give up. This week we're going to shift to something else here, but it's like prayer in many ways, I guess you could say, in that it's a spiritual discipline. It's not prayer exactly, but, well, I'll tell you what it is in just a moment. This past Wednesday, February 17, in 2021, was Ash Wednesday, the beginning of this season that we call Lent. Lent is a time from Ash Wednesday leading up to Easter Sunday, in a month and a half or so. And you may remember, if you were a student here last year, that we celebrated Ash Wednesday together in chapel time, and we gave you the option to come forward with the ashes on your forehead. And that seems like a long time ago. When that was back before the pandemic struck last year, in SUNY here at least. But it's that time of year again. And I'd like to talk with you a little bit about fasting, because this is what some people choose to do during Lent, for a time at least. And I want to talk about what that is and why people would choose to do that. First of all, this is something that Jesus did. Lent was not a thing in Jesus' time, but Jesus fasted for 40 days. That was something incredible. But when we read the Bible, we understand that this made Jesus stronger. Maybe not physically. Physically, I imagine that to be exhausting. But spiritually, it strengthened Jesus. Now, there are lots of reasons not to fast, or I should say there are lots of bad reasons to fast, lots of not good reasons to fast, we'll put it that way. We don't choose to fast because somebody told us to. Okay? We don't choose to fast because we believe we have to do it in order to be saved. We don't choose to fast because it's just something that we've always done. We don't choose to fast because we think it'll make us win a contest or be, better than the person next to us. These are all not good reasons to fast. But there is at least one good reason to fast, I think, and I hinted at it earlier. I think that fasting makes us stronger. Again, not physically, but I think it strengthens that muscle that allows us to say no to certain things. Because what fasting is fasting is choosing for a time to say no to something. Usually that something is something that's not inherently bad for us. So things that people have fasted from would be something maybe like chocolate, okay, or hot Cheetos, or soda. It doesn't have to be food, maybe fasting from video games for a time. Okay, we choose to say no to those things for a while. And what we find that strengthens our ability to say no to the things that we really ought to say no to. Okay, things like sin. Okay, things that the devil puts in our way to try to trip us up. And when we strengthen that ability to say no to chocolate for a time, for instance, which isn't bad. I enjoy chocolate. I hope you do too. We find that we're more easily able to say no to the things that we ought to say no to. And that, I think, is one of the primary benefits of fasting. So I'd like to challenge you. Okay, you don't have to, but I'd like to challenge you to pick a length of time. Could be a day or 2 or 3, okay, or maybe just sun up to sundown or something like that, to set aside something that you regularly have. Okay, whether that's food or drink, or whether that's something like video games or social media or something like that, and say, you know what, I'm going to choose to say no to this for a certain period of time. And I'm going to replace it with something else. Okay, don't just say no to it. Fasting is not the same thing as going on a diet. That's not it. That's not the purpose of it. But fill it with something else. And may I encourage you maybe to fill that with persistent prayer or non-dollar section prayer. Okay, maybe you say, God, strengthen my hands. God, allow me to overcome this temptation. Allow me to be strong enough to say no to this thing that I really ought to say no to. Think something like gossip or bullying or unkindness or, being angry and upset with my parents. Okay, this thing that I ought to say no to. Help me to say no to that. Maybe replace that item with that. Now, one more thing on fasting here. It does the most good if it's the thing that we're saying no to is something that it is at least a challenge for us to say no to. Okay, for instance, if I say, hey, I'm going to fast from broccoli, well, that's not a big deal because I don't particularly enjoy broccoli. So it's not hard for me to say no to broccoli. All right, and I'll eat it because I know it's good for me, but I don't enjoy it necessarily. So maybe stay away from the broccoli fast if you're like me and that you don't appreciate that. But I'd like to give you a try to do that. Now, here's something else about fasting. It really kind of loses its impact. It loses its good impact if we broadcast to everybody around us what it is we're fasting, because then it makes it seem like, look at me, I'm so cool, I'm doing this. So I encourage you not to do that. But I would also encourage you to tell someone, maybe your teacher, maybe a trusted adult at home. Tell someone what you're doing, how long you're doing it for, and what it is you're fasting from, and what you're replacing it with. Go ahead and tell just one person. Okay, they can check in with you and say, hey, how's this going? What are you learning from this? Is it tough? Okay, what are you replacing it with? How's that going? I would encourage you to tell just one person, and that can still be a good thing then to let somebody in on what you're doing. So that's the challenge. Give it a try, okay? It doesn't have to be for the whole Lent 40 days here, but maybe give it a try for 1 day or 2 or 3 and see what you don't experience and what you don't learn and what God does in your life through this time. All right, that's it. I pray that you have a wonderful day today, and may you be richly blessed by God, and may you be faithful to Him.